I hadn't planned to turn heads that morning, but the moment I walked through the terrace doors at the Crescent Club, it was like time paused and snapped in judgment. White cotton pants, leather sandals, a soft breeze in my hair. To me, it felt like freedom. To my family, it looked like scandal. My father's face tightened like he'd bitten into something sour. My mother actually reached for her pearls, like I'd shown up wrapped in crime scene tape. I'd been gone for years, and they hadn't changed a bit. Voices dropped to whispers. Forks froze midair, and somewhere behind the champagne flutes and $200 sunglasses, my sister Mila gave me that perfect pitying smile. Maybe try something a bit less beach casual next time, I smiled back. Tight, polite, practiced, because I knew the game, and I knew what came next. My father stood up loud enough for the entire terrace to hear. "This is a members-only brunch," he snapped, "not a roadside diner." People looked up. Some curious, some smug, some already filming. Then came the real performance. He waved over a waiter like he was swatting at a fly. "Get someone in charge. Now." And that was the moment. That exact moment where he demanded to speak to the owner. And I just took a sip of my coffee and let him, because I knew something no one else at that table did. They were about to get everything they asked for, and not a bit of it, the way they expected. You'd think that after a scene like that, I would have turned around and walked away. But I didn't, because this wasn't just about brunch. It was about history. My history. See, I grew up in a house where silence had value, where feelings were edited out of conversations the way you crop bad lighting out of a photo. Our home looked like a magazine cover. Marble floor chandeliers, Christmas cards that belonged in a gallery. But underneath it all, it was cold. My dad, Douglas Donovan, believed image was everything. Smile wide, speak softly, control the narrative. If it couldn't be monetized or shown off at a dinner party, it didn't exist. My mom, Helen, she didn't just raise daughters, she sculpted them. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect silence, and Mila, she thrived in it. Debate team captain, Ivy League political husband, house in DC. She was exactly what they'd ordered from the catalog of perfect children. Then there was me, Sienna, the outlier, the glitch in the family matrix. I left NYU halfway through sophomore year, moved to Austin, waited tables, rented a studio apartment with no AC, and they never let me forget it. At events, they'd introduce me as our little dreamer, which was their polite way of saying, "We don't know what she does. We just know it isn't respectable." Every time I showed up, I was a walking reminder that not all investments pay off, at least not right away. So, no, I wasn't invited to today's brunch. But I was still on the club's guest list. And not because of a pity membership, but because of something they didn't know. Something that was about to turn their perfect little Sunday into a reckoning. I'd barely taken my seat when I saw the storm forming in my father's eyes. He was already flagging down a waiter like a man swatting away a mosquito. A young manager rushed over, nervous smile hands clasped. Before she could even speak, my father cut her off. "My daughter," he announced loudly enough for half the terrace to hear, "is disrupting the club's dress code. I'd like her removed immediately." The poor woman froze. You could see the panic flicker across her face, the kind that says, "Please don't make me part of this family meltdown." My mother leaned in, her voice sharp and quiet. "Why must you always make a scene, Sienna?" I set down my glass, looked right at her, and said, "I didn't." "You did." The silence that followed was heavy. Every table nearby had gone still, pretending not to listen. But they were. They always did when it came to the Donovans. My father's jaw tightened. "Enough. If the manager can't do her job, I'll speak to the owner myself." The manager tried to calm him. "Sir, perhaps we can resolve." He waved her off. "No, I'll speak to the owner. Now." That was the moment I'd been waiting for, the one I'd imagined more times than I could admit. I stood up slowly, The chair scraped against the marble, loud and deliberate. "You want to speak to the owner," I said, my voice steady, almost calm. He glared at me. "Yes, I do." I smiled, just a little. "Then you're about to." I slipped off my sandals and started walking barefoot across the polished marble floor, each step echoing through that overpriced silence. People stared. Phones tilted up. Mila whispered my name like a warning or a prayer. But I didn't turn back. Because this wasn't shame anymore. This was clarity. And while my father demanded to speak to the owner, I was already on my way to meet him face to face. You know what no one ever teaches you in a family like mine? How to start from zero. After I left NYU, I didn't have a grand plan. I didn't even have a car. What I had was a front desk job at a 3-star hotel off I-35 where the carpet smelled like lemon bleach and the night shift felt like a ghost town. Most people treated that job like a stepping stone. I treated it like a masterclass. I studied everything, how guests reacted when they were ignored for 5 seconds too long, how a clean lobby made someone forgive a 2-hour wait, how to smile through insults and calm down a man who thought yelling was part of check-in. I made myself invisible so I could observe everything. And when no one expected anything from me, I learned faster than anyone else. Then one night, a guest showed up past midnight, tired, irritated, asking for a quiet room with fast Wi-Fi and no nonsense. His name was Tanner West, and he changed everything. He noticed how I handled a messy reservation, in under a minute how I de-escalated an angry couple without flinching. The next day, he asked to buy me coffee. I almost said no, but something told me to sit down. Over 1 cup, then 2, then more, he asked real questions. Not, "What do you do?" but, "What do you want to do?" He listened. Like actually listened. When I told him I wanted to fix broken places, he said, "So let's start with 1. We pooled our savings, took out a brutal loan, and bought a rundown boutique motel in Galveston that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. I painted the walls myself, scrubbed the tiles, trained the staff, built the reservation system in a spreadsheet because we couldn't afford software. And you know what? It worked. Within 6 months, the place turned a profit. So we bought another, then another. Every time we flipped a place, I felt like I was scrubbing a little more of their judgment off me. Tanner handled the investor side. I handled operations. We called the company West Ray Hospitality Group. His name, and mine. Even if no one knew it yet. And in 2023, we made our boldest move yet. The Crescent Club. The very place my parents had worshipped for decades. By then, it had become exactly what I remembered: elegant on the surface, but crumbling underneath. Old money. No vision, no innovation, no strategy. It was overpriced nostalgia waiting to rot. We made an offer quietly through a holding group. No press, no handshakes, just ink and signatures. When I signed the final contract, I didn't say anything. Didn't take a picture. Didn't pop champagne. I just stared at my name buried under legal language on the last page of the deal. Sienna Ray Donovan, co-founder, managing partner. No fanfare, no spotlight. Because the point wasn't for them to see me then. It was to make sure one day they couldn't look away. And that day had finally come. The lobby of the Crescent Club was quiet in that high society kind of way. Polished marble floors. Soft jazz in the background, the faint clink of silverware from the terrace. But the air had changed. You could feel it. I stood just around the corner out of view, watching, waiting. My father was at the front desk barking orders, like a man used to being obeyed. "This is outrageous," he said, voice clipped and commanding. "I demand to speak to the owner. Now." The young concierge, barely 23, terrified, looked like she was praying for backup. And she got it. Nora Vale, the general manager, stepped in. Sharp blazer, calm eyes, no fear. She greeted him with the kind of poised authority that doesn't flinch. "Mr. Donovan," she said, "the owner is happy to speak with you now." He folded his arms. "Good. About time someone here takes this seriously." She gave a slight nod, then stepped aside, and I stepped forward. Same white cotton pants, same leather sandals, same disruptive outfit. Only now, I wasn't a guest. I was the answer to his demand. "Hello, Dad," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "You wanted to speak to the owner." The silence was instant. His face lost all color. My mother, always composed, actually gasped. Mila dropped her phone, and I just stood there. Still, steady, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't smile, I just let the truth land. For 10 years, I said, you taught me reputation was everything. And it is, if that reputation's built on something real. I built this. Quietly, without a family name, without connections, just work. He blinked, still trying to process it. Still hoping maybe this was some elaborate prank. But then Tanner appeared behind me. He walked up calm as ever, holding a black folder. Nora gestured toward the documents. "Ownership transfer filed March of last year," she said. Tanner handed it to the concierge, who placed it in front of my father like it was a death sentence. "West Ray Hospitality Group," Tanner said, "co-founded by Sienna Ray Donovan." He flipped the final page, and there it was. My name, my signature, not some decorative title, not a board seat given out of guilt. Owner of everything he thought still belonged to his world. He looked up at me, mouth slightly open, no words, and for the first time in my life, he saw me, not as the daughter he tried to fix, not as the dropout, but as the storm he never saw coming. And I didn't say another word. I didn't need to, because this time, the silence spoke loud enough. I don't know who filmed it. Some guest on the balcony, probably. All I know is that by the next morning, the video was everywhere. A 42-second clip, titled "Disowned Daughter Owns the Country Club Literally." The audio wasn't even perfect, but it didn't matter. My father's voice still came through loud and clear. "I want to speak to the owner." And then me stepping forward, calm, unshaken. "You're looking at her." The internet lost its mind. Comments flooded in. Some people called it the most satisfying power move they'd ever seen. Others said I was cold calculated. A few even accused me of staging it. And then came the press. Headlines like, "From Black Sheep to Boss. Rich family gets served karma on their own patio." There were memes, reenactments. A few influencers even showed up outside the club trying to get a selfie with the girl who flipped the script. I didn't post anything, didn't say a word. But my silence, it only made the fire grow bigger. My parents, they were livid. Suddenly, they were the victims of betrayal, of humiliation. My mother called Mila crying, saying I had weaponized my success to publicly shame them. My father went even further. He called a lawyer, claimed the club footage had been leaked, said I'd allowed a family matter to become a defamatory spectacle. He accused me of emotional damage, reputation sabotage, and my personal favorite, corporate bullying. That part almost made me laugh. Almost, but I didn't panic. Because I'd seen this tactic before. In our house, the first one to cry foul usually had the most to hide. So I did what I'd always done when the walls started shaking. I got to work. Pulled every document, every policy, every board bylaw. If he wanted to fight this out loud, I'd let the truth speak louder. Because this wasn't just about one brunch. It never was. This was about power, about legacy, about what happens when the person you underestimated the most becomes the one who holds the keys. And I was ready. For the hearing. For the headlines. For all of it. Let him come for the empire. I built it brick by brick, and I knew where every piece was buried. The board met in private, behind glass doors, behind silence, but everyone at the Crescent Club knew what was happening. They'd seen the clips, heard the stories. Whispers turned into questions, and questions turned into something harder to ignore. The investigation didn't take long, because truth never really hides. Douglas Donovan, former board vice chair, my father, had fingerprints all over decisions that should have been impartial. Preferential memberships to old friends. Contracts awarded to vendors linked to his charity foundation. Funds misallocated from donor events. A pattern of behavior. A legacy of entitlement. When the board chair read out the final motion, the room stayed dead still. Effective immediately, Douglas Donovan is removed from the board of the Crescent Club. His honorary membership is revoked, his access permanently suspended. The vote unanimous. No handshakes. No thank you for your service. Just silence. And then, the walk. I wasn't going to attend the meeting, but something in me needed to see it. So I stood near the entrance as they came out. My mother clutched her handbag like it might protect her from the judgment in the air. Her eyes flicked past me, never meeting mine. My father looked straight ahead. But as the murmurs started, as a few phones lifted just high enough to record, as the legacy he'd built turned into polite avoidance and sideways glances, he finally turned to me. His voice low, bitter. "You think this makes you better than us?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "Just freer." And that was the moment. Not the reveal, not the video, not the headlines. This. Watching them walk out of a place they once ruled, not as victims, not as royalty, but as people who finally had to live without the illusion of control. They left under the weight of their own undoing. No one escorted them. They didn't need it. Their shame did the job. And I stood there, quiet, whole. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. It just looks like the door finally closing behind the people who never thought they'd have to leave. It had been a few weeks. The headlines faded. The gossip moved on. The club returned to its usual rhythm, polite smiles, fresh linens, and expensive silence. And then, one afternoon, she came. No warning, no entourage, just her, my mother. She stood at the entrance to my office, clutching something tight in both hands, an old cream-colored envelope slightly bent at the corners. "Hi, Sienna," she said softly. Her voice careful, like one wrong word might make me vanish again. I didn't invite her to sit, but she did anyway. She opened the envelope and slid something across my desk. A photo. Halloween, 1996. I was maybe 5, dressed as a bumblebee, wings crooked, grinning ear to ear with a juice box in one hand. My dad had his arm around me. My mom was smiling the real kind, not the rehearsed one. She said, "That was the last time you let us take a picture without flinching." I didn't answer. She didn't expect me to. Her hands trembled a little, and then without ceremony, she said the words I didn't think I'd ever hear. "We were afraid." A pause, and you didn't fit the fear. I looked at her. Really looked. And for once, she didn't look like the woman who used to correct my posture at the dinner table or whisper reminders about lipstick before school events. She looked like a person, tired, exposed, trying. She added, "You were unpredictable. You questioned things we needed to believe were stable." Another pause. Then she said, "We thought protecting the family meant controlling everything inside it, including you." Still, I said nothing. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. But I listened, and she noticed. Her eyes welled up but didn't spill. She looked down at the photo again and whispered, "We're trying, Sienna." That part felt real. Not a line. Not a plea. Just a statement. I nodded. Not because everything was okay, but because maybe for the first time, we weren't pretending anymore. She stood slowly, folded the envelope, and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back. "We missed you," she said. And then she left. Just like that. No hug. No dramatics. Just space. Finally, the kind that didn't feel like distance, but like the start of something new. The Crescent Club looked different that night. Not because the chandeliers were brighter or the flowers were fresher, but because for the first time, the room didn't feel like it was watching me. It felt like it was waiting for me. The youth charity gala was my idea. A small thing, really music fundraising, a quiet cause that mattered more than appearances. And yet, every table was full, every face carefully polite. I wore the same white cotton pants, the same sandals, same understated blouse. And this time, no one said a word. Because they knew, not just who I was, but what I'd done. I made my way through the crowd. A few members gave polite nods. A couple of them even smiled. Not the patronizing kind, the respectful kind. Then I saw her, Mila, standing near the terrace, arms folded, glass of wine untouched. And before I could say anything, she walked toward me. No script, no tension, just her finally unguarded. She stopped in front of me, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You were never the problem." I was just too scared to say it. I didn't say anything right away. We just stood there, two women raised to perform, finally done pretending. There was no apology, no breakdown, just truth. And sometimes that's enough. The music picked up behind us. The lights dimmed just slightly. And as the guests turned their attention toward the stage, I stepped out onto the terrace. The ocean shimmered under the moonlight. Same waves, same sound. But everything had changed. For years, I let them define me. Let them frame my silence as weakness, my distance as failure. But the truth, I didn't need to be louder. I just needed to stand still long enough for them to see me clearly, because respect isn't given to outfits. It's given to the people who earn it. And this time, they didn't see me coming. But they won't forget me now. If this story hit you where it counts, tell us in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated and proved everyone wrong? We want to hear your story. And don't forget, our channel drops new drama stories every single day. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and we'll see you in the next one.